Hello, I'm David Plazas. I'm the Opinion and Engagement Director for the USA Today Network Tennessee and the Tennessean. I have the pleasure of having Tillman Payne III, who's candidate for judge in Division 4 of the 20th Circuit, the Judicial Court here in representing Davidson County. And this is part of a series of interviews that we're doing as we approach the March 3rd, 2020 primary. People have talked a lot about the presidential elections, but there are also local elections too that day, including judicial positions like the one that Mr. Payne is running for. Thank you so much for joining us today.
David, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's take it through your journey. You have such an interesting background as an attorney, as a member of the armed forces. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
And I understand that you earned your law degree while you were serving.
That's correct. I got my law degree at George Mason University. Now it's called the Antonin Scalia School of Law at George Mason University in Arlington, Virginia. At the time, I was assigned to the Pentagon and on a working group team called Checkmate.
And tell me a little bit about why you wanted to become a lawyer.
Great question. When I was in the Air Force, I realized that at the time I would be eligible for retirement that I was going to have another career because I was going to be just too young to really retire. So I started thinking about what I wanted to do. I took a weekend and just kind of did a soul searching and said, well, what do you really want to do? What do you really want to do? I said, well, you know what? I really want to be a lawyer, and I really want to see if I can help people. So as I was very fortunate because as I neared the end of my Air Force career, I was assigned at the Pentagon, and I decided I enrolled or applied to law school, was accepted at George Mason, and was able to complete the law degree while I was on active duty. During the time I was on active duty, one of the things I wanted to do after I got the law degree and also passed the bar, I would take leave and actually help people in the Northern Virginia legal services do uncontested divorces and things that I could do in 1 or 2 days. But I really started enjoying the practice of law, and when I decided to get out of the Air Force, I came back to Tennessee. And I was hired as an assistant public defender in the 15th District, which is the counties east of here, most Wilson, Smith, Jackson, Macon, and Trousdale County. During that time, I didn't really know people lived in such a kind of a desperate way. And I was really surprised. I was working for indigent people, and I felt like there were a lot of problems with those folks, and they didn't seem to have anyone working to help them. So they kept cycling right back. I'd be getting these great deals for them, and they'd be back in 6 months. And after doing that for 5.5 years and seeing how the courts worked, both general sessions and criminal court, I realized that one of the linchpins that I thought wasn't really doing a good enough job in our criminal justice system were the judges. Once someone has been held accountable for a crime, they're under the supervision most of the time of the judge, because we can't put everybody in jail. And so they will most likely be put on some type of probation, and it's the judge who basically oversees that and oversees the probation office while they monitor them. But they weren't really doing anything to help the folks. They weren't sending them to effective classes. They weren't dealing with the underlying causes. And I believe that judges should be concerned about that, because I think part of our job is to get people out of the criminal justice system, not to continue to just cycle them in and out. And this particular job here in Davidson County has great interest for me because Judge Seth Norman has done just that. Judge Norman, a visionary, because he created something that didn't exist, which was a drug court with its own residential facility. And by doing that, he is saving $1 million a year in treating addiction as opposed to just incarcerating the individuals that would normally be sent to prison for this time, and saving the money, and also they're changing lives. Lives are changing. That model of treating the underlying cause and then helping people get back into society is what we need to be doing more than we are doing now. Now, people will tell you that we currently have probation office, we have daily reporting service, we have a lot of great programs that potentially can help people get back into society, but it is my belief that we need to focus more on those programs. In the sense we probably need to create some additional programs similar to Judge Norman's program that maybe even has a residential facility for folks that aren't just addicted to drugs. We have people that come through the system, criminal justice system, who are just poor. And we should be identifying that as an issue. If you really just take it in a kind of a gross sense, a person that steals a loaf of bread and they're hungry goes to jail. A person who steals a loaf of bread and they're addicted, they get treated. So so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I think we need to be looking at underlying causes and addressing those.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about what in your background and in your motivation makes you the best qualified person for this position.
Well, I think what makes me the best qualified person for this position is what I've done. First of all, my military experience. I'm very disciplined experience. I worked as a logistics plans officer. I had a detachment. I was a commander for a year with several people working for me. I was selected 2 times to be executive officer for general level individuals at the Pentagon and also at the Defense Logistics Agency. So I'm very organized. I understand how to structure. And since I've always been involved in community service, either through some type of sports activity, by sponsoring teams, coaching teams. So I'm always engaged in the community. And so I feel that, and what I've done in practice of law is even more important. And what that is that I've been in courtrooms dealing with people who have had problems. I've been interviewing clients, interviewing witnesses, interviewing police officers, cross-examining police officers, dealing with the entire makeup of what it takes to process a criminal case. And therefore, I think I've handled thousands of cases. I handled thousands of cases, everything from a traffic citation all the way up to a first degree murder jury trial. And therefore, I think I have the best experience to actually deal with the people that come through the system and to deal with what we need to do to fix it on the back end. I think that makes me the most qualified. I don't think you will find anyone that has had more experience actually dealing with people and trying to resolve their issues and get them back to society.
Mm-hmm. And as an attorney, tell us what are the attributes that you can bring to being a judge, and what are some of the things you might have to alter? Because obviously there's 2 separate roles, the attorney and the judge.
Well, what I think I can bring is that I have a great sense of what the issue is, or finding what the issue is. And what I mean by that is, if you're doing a trial, the most important thing about that trial is to find out what is the critical issue that's going to turn this case. Well, I think I'm a good judge of character with people, and I think I can find the things that will help people change their lives. Things that I might have to alter, I think I would have to alter maybe some of my current outside activities as it relates to community service. There may be some conflicts that I sit on a couple of boards for some community activities. I may have to change some of that. I'm the general counsel for a nonprofit. I'd have to consider those kinds of changes. But all in all, I think that it wouldn't make a big change in my life, and I believe that I'm just very suited, have the right temperament to adjudicate cases for folks. One of the things that always comes up when people are talking about judges is fairness, and I don't talk about those things because I think that's inherent. If you're not a fair and discerning person, you really shouldn't be practicing law, to be honest with you, because our business is to help people and to deal with issues and help people resolve issues. People come to us with problems, and whether they've committed an issue or whether they've been victimized, that there's a problem that a judge has got to see the pros and cons of both sides, weigh those things, and come up with something, a fair form of justice. And all too often, it seemed to me that we've been kind of cookie cutter in some of our approaches to how we deal with people, and I think I can change that.
And is there anything that you'd like to add on to or amend in terms of drug court? You talked about Seth Norman's vision, retired Judge Norman's vision.
Well, first of all, drug court is a great program. We need to, one, shore it up and make sure that it's properly funded and that we identify the success of drug court so that we can continue to get the support from the government, from other nonprofits, and even from private industry possibly. And so we need to make sure that is being done well and that we're maximizing our capacity. I think at this point we're not fully maximizing the capacity out there, and I think we need to focus on that. The other thing is that, and I saw this out in other counties, because I practiced throughout all of Middle Tennessee, is that there's lack of women's facilities. If a woman has a drug addiction issue, there aren't as many facilities and potential beds for those individuals. I think that it needs to be expanded. I think at this point, Judge Norman was working on creating a dedicated women's facility for in another location. But I think that needs to be done. We need to expand it that way. Also, I think we need to expand, the concept, meaning that we have drug court, which is basically people who have addiction, but we again need to expand this whole process to other forms of problems. You know, the poverty issue. We need to deal with folks that we can tell that this is really a poverty issue, a mental health issue. And we do have some mental health courts, but we really need to focus on these issues and potentially create additional courts that can deal with that. I believe in restorative justice, and you know, a lot of folks say, well, what does that mean? What's the concept? The concept is really based on trying to fix society. So what you're doing is you're restoring the victim as best you can to make them whole, because they've been victimized, they've been damaged, and when that happens to someone, they go through a lot of issues that you really need to try to focus on. You know, what do they want? How do they want to resolve this? How can you get them back? But also, once people have been held accountable, you've got to try to find a way to restore them back. It's our responsibility of the criminal justice system as society is to deal with, to stop people from committing crimes, not just to document their commission of the crimes and document their failure to comply with the rules that we've created after they committed a crime. But it's our job to find out what is causing this issue and try to resolve it. One of the things I found too is that when someone's been held accountable for a crime and then you put them on a probationary period and you send them right back to the same location, you know, you're actually you're putting them right back in the environment that got them in trouble. So we need to think about trying to be more modification of that as where we let people go back to.
There's some interesting issues that have come up in the legislature or also in the national discussion when it's come to criminal justice reform. One of them is the potential end to cash bail, for example. And you may have seen from your own vantage point as an attorney that there are a lot of low-income people who can't afford to leave jail. And that may be out of your purview if you're elected judge, but right now as an attorney, as a candidate, do you have any preferences to see how you'd like to see the criminal justice system work better for clients both on the defense and also on the plaintiff side?
Just for example, the cash bail issue, I think that there's a place in the criminal justice system for cash bail. The problem is that we shouldn't have cash bail punishing people who are poor. And the way that happens is you start arbitrarily setting cash bail for crimes that are low-level, nonviolent crimes, and folks can't make those bail amounts. But if you start looking at other areas, now this is going on throughout the nation. People are looking at pretrial services. We have it here in Davidson County. If you meet a certain criteria, you aren't even required to make a bail. You can be released on your own recognizance. Even the statutes themselves start out that way. Mm-hmm. You don't have to have a bail. You can immediately be released on your own recognizance if you meet the criteria according to the statutes. The only reason for cash bail is to supposedly to make sure people come back to the court. And the rules basically are not the rules, but the likelihood of somebody coming back is very high, especially if it's a low-level crime and they live in the area, their family lives in the area. Why does someone who's charged with a misdemeanor theft charge and 3 generations live in the same general area of the city need a cash bail? You know, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think that we can reduce the use of cash bail, especially where it's being used or it affects people because of their low income levels. So yeah, I think that should be done. I also believe that as a judge, you have a lot of discretion. Personally, we have a lot of people incarcerated awaiting adjudication. Percentages are like 80% of the people that are in jail are waiting to have their cases adjudicated. Well, one of the things I would do differently once on the bench is that I would review these bail amounts and review folks in jail every time they came to court to see are we making progress on the case? Is this bail sufficient? Is there any real reason that they need to be held? One of the things that I think is important with bail is the importance of protecting society. You know, you wouldn't want to release someone into society that's dangerous. Mm-hmm. And so I would be more concerned, I'd be concerned about that, but if that was not a concern, then I would also be, the other thing is, are they going to come back to court? If they can just prove that they can have a reasonable likelihood to come back to court, then I think that the bail should be reasonable or it should be no bail.
What can you do if you're elected to the bench to make the justice system better for citizens?
Well, one is the bail. Is that I would be reviewing people's bail to ensure that we're not just holding people on low-level crimes. And I wouldn't wait for the defense attorney or to come to file a motion. I would review it. Anyone that's in jail, I would say, why are they in jail and what is the bail? And I would ask the defense attorney, is there any way this person can make this? You can really see the cases. It's not for people that are that work in the criminal justice system. I can walk in to a courtroom and they can read the docket, and it doesn't matter what the person's name is, but read the charge. And if they bring the person from the back, I'm thinking, well, why is that person in jail? So it's not a some of these are obvious things. You should really be able to see, well, this seems to be a pretty too low level of crime to have somebody in jail over. Some of the other things I think I can do to improve the criminal justice system is I really want to find additional programs that we can deal with to help young African American men who keep finding themselves in the criminal justice system, some programs, and coordinate better with the current nonprofits, probation offices, our reporting centers, even our unions, about trying to find these folks vocation and educational opportunities that will give them opportunities to get out of the criminal justice system.
What are some critiques that you might have of the current system as it is, and what might you be able to bring in terms of a fresh eye if you're elected?
My biggest critique is one of the bail issues. Is I think that I run because I represent clients in a lot of different counties. If there's a probation violation, a lot of times they hold these individuals without bond, but sometimes these individuals either have families that they need to take care of, and the violation they've been charged with is not reporting or not paying, and it's just a money issue. So those kind of folks, I think, need to be we need to deal with those bail issues. Some of the things I think I personally can bring, or my critique of the system, and I can personally try to fix, is basically in how we run the courtroom as it relates to efficiency. As an attorney, I'm aware that all the attorneys have many cases in many different locations. I would want to start my court in the morning with anyone that's ready to resolve their case. Let's take those first. Let's don't call the docket and through that laborious process and make these people wait. If you've got your case ready, I'd have the attorneys show up early, present your cases, let's get them resolved, let's move on. Now let's call the docket. And also I would set special hearings, more than we currently have, I think, say at 1 o'clock. And what I mean by special hearing, if there's going to be a plea or there's going to be something that we need to set at a special time, I do more of that. Right now we just it's almost like a cattle call. In most courts, you just show up everybody at 9 o'clock and work till you get everything resolved.
You had mentioned the issue of providing more opportunity for young black men, and obviously there have been historic racial disparities within our judicial system. From your observations, as a longtime lawyer, as someone who's been in the military, and now looking at our own justice system here in Nashville, what are some ways that we can talk about that in a healthy way and resolve those things?
Well, one of the things is we have to understand that an 18 to 25-year-old man, white, black, or whatever, is a very different person than, say, a 40 or 50-year-old man. There's such a maturity thing of changing when someone gets over 25, or maybe even over 30, that we're dealing with folks that aren't really fully mature yet. I think that what we need to do is we need to focus on them, because a lot of times they come into this system because of peer pressure, hanging out with the wrong folks. They haven't decided what their life mission is, or what their purpose in life is yet, and they're just kind of caught up in those kinds of things. I really do think we need to study. We need to get together. We need to take all the programs that are currently available. We need to talk about what these folks have not had in their experiences and what they haven't experienced. And what I mean by that is a lot of the, especially the young African American men, have maybe even come through the juvenile justice system, which maybe they came from a bad part of the town, or part of the town that didn't have resources. And you got to realize that that's a different person than someone who's had a lot of opportunities. And we need to deal with that, because when they're adjudicated, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, in some ways, almost not so much reprogram, but you're going to have to educate them on how to live in society. It may be an accountability issue. I think people have to learn to be accountable. And if you don't learn to be accountable, when you're a young child, and as you grow up and you find yourself in the criminal justice system, I think we have a responsibility to help teach folks accountability, and not in a punitive way, but in a way in which we let them understand or teach them that you basically can change your life by choosing to be accountable for yourself. And the number of folks that I have encountered who have been through the criminal justice system and also have maybe even been to prison, and then they mature, and then they come back, and that's one of the things they always talk about is that, I didn't really know what I was really getting myself into. Well, we need to spend more time dealing with that, and I think we can develop a program actually to address that. There's a lot of folks that are coming through the criminal justice system that have a lot of number of adverse childhood experiences, and those kinds of experiences, we need to look at what the ways are to identify people's trauma, people's PTSD, and try to break through that and get them back to, or get them to a way in society that they can be productive.
Overwhelmingly, compared to other branches of government, the judiciary tends to have a much higher view of respect when we look at polls. Obviously, the media is not
Right.
toward the bottom, but there have been some issues over the last few years with regard to at least one judge that has hurt the credibility of judges. What might you be able to do to improve those messages and the credibility of the courtroom if you're an elected judge?
Well, I think one thing you need to have is you need to make sure that everybody is open. Meaning courtrooms need to be open. What people do and people's engagement with society. I'm active in the community. I think you have to live a life of honor if you want to be respected. And so I think it's a personal thing. Every judge should be engaged in society. They should have connections in society, and who actually help them be more accountable to themselves and to others. I'm active in my church. I think that the men in my church hold me accountable. And I don't want to disappoint them. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and we have many of our brothers are leaders in this community, and so we hold each other accountable, and we don't really we don't condone misbehaving, and we definitely are trying to make everyone a better man. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's a tough thing when people kind of isolate themselves. I'm a judge, I can't, therefore I'm off in my own world. Well, when you do that, that's when the problems are going to come. If you're not out in the community, if you're not active in a church, if you don't have people that are involved in your life and you're engaged in their lives, then you can sometimes, I think people will get into those types of situations.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little more about your own background, about how you grew up, and you'd mentioned you're from Tennessee?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Carthage, Tennessee, which is about 50 miles east of here. It's actually part of that judicial district that I was working in. I've lived in Nashville since 2003, right after I retired from the Air Force. But my parents were both graduates of Tennessee State University, both in education. My father taught vocational agriculture, first at the segregated Turner High School in Carthage, Tennessee, and later at Gordonsville High School in Gordonsville, Tennessee. And my mother taught sixth grade primarily in Trousdale County elementary school. And so my father, because he was involved in agriculture, we had a farm. So I grew up on a farm, raising tobacco, pigs. We had cattle, polled Herefords, the whole gamut, the chickens, the garden, the big garden, etc. And so really that probably what made me successful in the Air Force is because I understood, because I was in logistics, supply, transportation, and maintenance, and so that somewhat made my job in the Air Force somewhat easy. I understood the concepts and how they all work together. After high school, I went to the University of Tennessee. Actually, I majored in vocational agriculture, but decided about halfway through that I wanted to maybe do something different, see more of the world, and I earned an Air Force ROTC scholarship, got commissioned in 1983. And then started my active duty assignments and traveled, extensively with the Air Force. Initially in Sacramento, California, then down in Louisiana. Then I went over to Spain for a few years. I came back to Oklahoma for a few years. Then I went to Korea. Was a detachment commander there. Went up to a numbered Air Force, which is a headquarters level in Korea. Did that for a year, and eventually came back to teach at the Air University. And that's when I made my decision about trying to go to law school. I taught a course called Joint Doctrine Air Campaign, Joint Doctrine Air Campaign. And basically what it was is putting together a potential air war to defeat a potential enemy. And we brought students in, joint services, and they basically went through these scenarios, and then we critiqued them at the end on what they developed as an air war. And that actually led to my job at the Pentagon. I was selected to be on this planning team because of my logistics experience and the fact that I taught this class. I did that for 4 years, and we basically did what-if planning. We'd get calls from the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, hey, we got this scenario, what would we do? How would we respond to it? How should we respond to it? And we did that. I did that. Then I was selected by my directorate, which was my entire career field, the leader at the Air Staff, to be his exec, basically to handle administrative things for his office and his staff. Did that, and then I went over to the Defense Logistics Agency and was in strategic planning for about 6 to 8 months, and then they asked me to come be an executive officer for that general also. And after doing that, I was assigned to Hawaii for a numbered Air Force job, which was basically doing regional planning in the Pacific. But that's my basic background, and I got the law degree while I was at the Pentagon, and here we are today.
And if you're just joining us now, I'm here with Tillman Payne III, who is a candidate for judge for Division 4 in the 20th Circuit Judicial District here in Nashville. And tell us, give us your pitch to voters. You know, why should they elect you?
Well, you know, a lot of things that give a short pitch because you heard basically my story. But first of all, you know, I grew up in a community, and my parents were very involved in community, and we believe in public service, So when I joined the Air Force, I felt like this was an important thing to do. I felt like it was a good way to be part of our country. And then following that, I wanted to also help people. So when I got my law degree, I became an assistant public defender, and I saw how people were just, in this particular area, were just being rotating through this system. I felt like, you know, we need to do something about how we deal with folks that are held accountable for crimes. People that we need to protect victims. We need to try to make them whole. But we also need to find a way to restore people back to society. I believe in compassionate restorative justice. I don't really see that in a lot of what goes on in the courtrooms now at either the general sessions level or at the criminal court level. I think that we've got to have judges that are not so much on a prosecutorial mindset, but on a obviously fair, just, follow the law, but also how do we deal with someone that has been held accountable. And so I'm asking for your vote on March 3rd because I think we need to make some changes to our criminal justice system. We need judges on the bench that are willing to maybe develop some new programs, do something different, corral the programs we got with a greater focus on really dealing with these folks that have underlying issues. Because if we can fix those folks, we will actually help the victims, because the victims will then know that we have changed this person's life and there will not be another victim like them, or that person won't come back and victimize them again. So that's why I'm running. That's why I'm asking for your vote. And
how can they learn more about you?
Okay, you can go to www.tillmanpayneforjudge. That's Tillman with 2 L's, TillmanPayneforjudge.com. And click and like. Also on Facebook and Twitter.
You can also read the questionnaire that Mr. Payne filled out for us at Tennessean.com/opinion, and we'll probably be featuring those over the next few days as we head into the election. Any final words before we conclude?
No, I really appreciate the interview, and I'd like to say that I really am excited about the opportunity. This is running for office is tough, but we got to have folks do it. We've got to step up. If we think we can make a difference in our communities, we've got to step up and we've got to try. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate this. I appreciate you very much and wish you the best of success. And to our readers, to our subscribers, our viewers, thank you very much. If you haven't subscribed, come to thetennessean.com for more public service journalism. Again, I'm David Plazas, the opinion